edition of the Big Sky Now podcast. I'm your host, Josh Amick. As always, I have my esteemed panel with me, and we're going to get into Big Sky Conference play. A lot of exciting games to look forward to this week. Starting off with UC Davis on the road against, Idaho on the road against UC Davis. Two matchups of 3-1 teams. Should be a good test for both teams to see where they're at as far as conference play goes. Mark, what are you expecting in this game, and who is most poised to go 1-0 in conference play?
Right off the bat, I say Idaho. I think they're playing better, and they've shown they can win on the road, and defense travels and all that other cliches. They pretty much dominated Abilene Christian until the heat kind of got to them in the second half, and they went to play. They played zone a lot in the second half because of that, and then they went back to man on the last drive where they got the 2 sacks and the strip and won the game and stuff like that. So I don't think the heat's gonna be a factor in California. The one thing is kind of weird is UC Davis or Idaho has not beaten UC Davis since they came back to the Big Sky in 2018. UC Davis is 4-0. I mean, they haven't played in 2 years. The UC Davis won up in Moscow 2 years ago toward the end of the season, the game that, Idaho kind of needed. They ended up winning the next week and got into the playoffs. Everything kind of before that, Idaho was still, either had the old coach or was trying to find its way. So I think, I think Idaho's got a good chance to finally end that streak against UC Davis this week.
Yeah, kind of the same belief. Normally, I like to side with the home team in these kind of close matchup games when we're previewing. But like Mark mentioned, just Idaho's ability that they've proven they can win on the road. We all saw, they didn't win the first game against Oregon, but we saw how hard they competed in that first one. Got an FBS win at Wyoming, and then last week's game against Abilene Christian. The thing I'm kind of looking for in this one, though, is UC Davis's red zone offense. They went 3 of 7 in terms of converting touchdowns in the red zone last week against Utah Tech, I believe it was. And then one of 5 in the first half. They settled for field goals quite a lot of times in that first half. So that's going to be something I'm really keeping my eye out for this week in that matchup.
Yeah, I was going to say the same thing. 400 Ridley field goals probably will not get it done against Idaho this weekend. Like I mentioned, Land Larison's a great running back for the Aggies. They've got some talent, but I just think Idaho has it going on. I like Idaho's makeup on defense. I like the job Jason Eck has done. He's had to reload a lot of positions, and with the exception of a pretty impressive loss to Oregon, they won every test. So I think it's all Vandals this weekend.
Yeah, I'm in that same boat. I feel like with that red zone offense kind of aspect that Ian was talking about, Idaho's offensive or defensive line has been able to press some of the best teams in the country with Oregon. They've gotten to the quarterback. They've been able to stop that. So, you have to get to the red zone to have that chance anyway. And I don't think that Idaho's defense is going to give them very many opportunities.
All right, we shall see. I'm definitely looking forward to that game. I think that could possibly be the game of the week. Another good matchup we have is a battle of 2-2 teams. We got Sacramento State on the road against Northern Arizona. Do you think the home team prevails in this game, or what are you looking forward to in this matchup the most, Fritz?
I think I have to go with Sac State. I was afraid NAU might get worked over pretty good last week by Incarnate Word, and that's what happened. Sac State, they lost a bunch too. Scatabo is running all over the whatever league they're in. Is it the Big 12, Big 10, whatever league Arizona State's in? I can't keep track. And yet they still, they get a touchdown from Elijah Tolliver last week, and there's Carson Conklin throwing for 2 TDs. Seems like they've had guys that have been there forever doing good jobs for him with the Hornets. I think they're the pick.
Yeah, it's definitely kind of been a next man up situation with Sac State this year. And mentioned the last podcast, their defense has really impressed me the last 2 weeks with only giving up 7 points between the 2 games. And just kind of seeing how NAU played last week against UIW, I think they're going to really have to kind of find their identity with this one this week. But I I think that's kind of a defining game for them, just like how last week we kind of thought it was in that same situation of whether they were going to be a contender across the league this year. I think this one's going to be, setting them up for the rest of the conference play.
Yeah, I'm kind of in the same boat with Fritz and John. I'm also on Sac State in this one. I just wasn't too inspired by NAU's performance against Incarnate Word last week. I think Sac State's going to bring that shutout they had last week, kind of build on that defensively. Don't think they're going to shut NAU out, but I think they're going to build on that strong defense performance from last week.
Yeah, I like Sac State in a close one on the road. Saw NAU was up 14-7 on the United Auto Workers, or whatever that UIW stands for, and then lost 38-14 to Incarnate Word. I know who they are, but it's just Sac State's a little more solid team, even though they're playing at 7,000 feet.
Yeah, out there in Flagstaff, Arizona. Beautiful place, by the way. But moving on, the Grizz head to Cheney to take on a struggling Eastern Washington team. Do the struggles continue this weekend for the Eagles, or can they leave this game with any sort of thing to be optimistic about for the rest of their season? Ian, let's go to Ian on this one.
Yeah, I've mentioned it every time we've talked about Eastern. I'm going to mention it again. Eastern's run defense. I know they played an FBS team last week, but they gave up 320 yards on the ground. And against Montana, you can best believe they're going to attack on the ground against Eastern coming up. So, yeah, I'm not too confident in the Eagles taking a win in this one on Saturday.
I think the Grizz are ready to break through on the red turf. I didn't realize until Saturday somebody mentioned that Eastern put in the red turf of Roos Field in 2010, and the Grizz have never won on it. It's been 0-7. I'm a little concerned about the quarterback situation. I thought maybe Ayat's fourth TD was maybe one TD too many because we didn't see him after that. But yeah, the run, the way the Grizz have been running the ball, the way Eastern has not been defending the run, I think the Grizz are due or even overdue for a win on Roos Field.
Mark, do you think the Eagles sell out for the run on this game and have anything to build off of, or do you think it's going to be all Grizz?
I know it's tough, living where I do. We're inundated with Eastern news and stuff. So, ever since they've started getting good in the late 2000s and, won the title in 2010, and they've been good since then. Couple bad seasons the last couple years. You still always kind of think, okay, they're gonna figure it out, and they're gonna start playing like the Eastern of the last few years. It's always been in the playoffs and stuff like that. But man, then every week you watch them, and they have a hard time stopping teams, and they just don't look like the Eastern of old. Fritz mentioned that Montana hasn't won there on the red, and I was looking at that. Even some of the most recent games, Montana State and Montana playing at Cheney, they may have won. I think Eastern won the last one, but Montana State, it was like a 1-touchdown game. So they're still pretty tough on their home field. And so that gives them a chance. It's kind of up to Montana, kind of like Montana State at Idaho State to a degree, to just show up and do your job and take all that stuff out of it.
Yeah, and I know with kind of what Ian was mentioning too with the defense, it's kind of what we've talked about, I feel like, every single week on this podcast. Well, if you look at it with Montana's side of things, they're coming off of back-to-back 300-plus rushing games. They put up 410 yards against Morehead State. Last week against Western Carolina, they put up 349 yards. I mean, Eli Gilman's carrying for over 10 yards per carry. They're going to have to figure something out, or else Montana's just going to run them off their home field.
Yeah, it's not looking good for the Eagles after the struggles they've had, and then facing a tough opponent on the road, or facing a tough opponent at home is still not going to be easy for them. But speaking of struggling, not to poke fun at Eastern Washington, but Cal Poly is on the road against the winless Northern Colorado Bears. Is there any hope for the Bears in this game to come out with a win in Cal Poly? I know we kind of teased this in previous episodes on the podcast, but John, do you think the Bears get their first win at home, or do you think the winning or the losing streak continues?
When I first looked at this game this week, I was really thinking that Northern Colorado had a good chance on it. I still think that they do have a good chance at it. They've got a lot of momentum from the last couple of weeks. Of course, they're coming off of a bye this past week, but right, no, they lost this last week, didn't they? Lost to Abilene Christian. That was, but Cal Poly hasn't been really impressive to me. But one thing that I did see that is kind of putting that down in my head about Northern Colorado is Costelli, their quarterback, Peter Costelli. He missed the last couple games for them, I believe. Picked up an injury. I want to say I hadn't read anything else from it from 2 weeks ago. But I know Darius Stewart was what kind of kept them in the game against ACU. And in that same game, Jonah Chong and Hank Gibbs were the two backup quarterbacks. They only combined for 25 yards passing. So that's kind of put some doubt into my head about Northern Colorado for this week. But I do think that they still have a chance.
This might come back to bite me, but just looking at their schedule, I don't see another win for Northern Colorado on their schedule, and I don't think they're going to go defeated in back-to-back seasons. So for that lone reason, I'm going to pick Northern Colorado in this game. Like I said, might come back to bite me, but I do think they're going to snap their, I think it's 16-game losing streak at this point, dating back to 2 years ago now. So I think they're going to get the win on Saturday.
I'll hop on what Ian said, long losing streak. Schedule doesn't look good after this. I'm all Bears. Go Bears.
Mark, you in agreement with that? You think if they don't win this week, it's lights out for the Bears?
I mean, I guess the thing is that, I mean, somebody has to win. They're not going to play to a tie. So somebody has to win this game. And as much as you might think Cal Poly might be a little bit better team, it's not like they're, a bit standing out as a juggernaut either. So I don't know. I mean, the Bears are 0-4, but they only lost by 2 to Abilene Christian, team that, gave Idaho a scare at the end. And, Abilene Christian had to kick a field goal to beat them. So there's hope for the Bears. I mean, I guess we'll see how it plays out. I don't know. It could be 7-3. I don't know.
Yeah, just to clarify, go ahead.
I was just maybe they'll go to overtime.
Let's hope not. I think 4 quarters is enough for us two teams. But also, just to clarify, last week Northern Colorado played Stephen F. Austin and they lost 48-7. So maybe the momentum they had in weeks 2 and 3 will carry on at home, or maybe the winning or the losing streak continues. I keep saying winning streak, so maybe I have more faith in them than I'm giving them credit for. So we'll find out on our picks. But last topic we have for the day before we get into our picks is Idaho State has been playing pretty decent ball, but now they're welcoming the Montana State Bobcats, who are undefeated on the season. Will the Bengals keep it close in this game? Do they have a shot at all? Or do the Bobcats cruise to 5-0? What do you think, Fritz?
I don't know if cruise is the right word. I think it was Mark mentioned where to get some Pocatello for the Grizzlies when they go over there. Just weird stuff happens. But I think Montana State plays better in Pocatello than the Grizz do. And they're 4-0 and just playing lights out football right now on both sides, all 3 sides, really. They blocked a punt for a touchdown last week. And so I'm, with all due respect to the Jungle Twitter handle, go Cats. That's my pick.
All right.
Yeah, I'd have to agree. I mean, like I said earlier, Idaho State throws the ball well, and that gives them a chance. It's also Montana State runs the ball well, and that's a good way to control the game and control the crowd and control the clock and stuff like that, and impose their will on Idaho State. So I think Idaho State has a chance just because, but it's kind of up to Montana State to kind of do what it does and take control of the game.
Yeah, I think it's going to shake out kind of similarly to Idaho State's game against North Dakota. I think Montana State's going to get a pretty big lead early. Maybe they cut into it like towards the second half, fourth quarter, make a bit of a comeback, get it a little closer, but I think it's going to be all Cats.
Yeah, I'm in that same boat. Idaho State's defense has given up a couple of big rushing games, and that's Montana State's bread and butter. So I think the Bobcats' offensive line will open up a few big holes, and Scott Trey will add to his rushing totals.
All right. Well, that brings us into my favorite part of the podcast when I am picking terrible picks and my experts are doing right by me. So we're going to start with Ian this week. He swept the board last week. picking 11 games, didn't lose a single one. He now moves to 41-5 on the season. Him and Fritz are tied for first place. But Ian, since you swept the board last week, give us your pick for this week.
Man, if only I could bet here. I'd be making some good money.
Yeah.
To start off, I'm going, like I said earlier, I'm going Northern Colorado over Cal Poly. I'm going Sac State over NAU. Chattanooga over Portland State. By the way, when I was looking up that game, this is going to be Portland State's second time ever playing in the Eastern time zone. That's what they had written on their website about it. So for that, I'm going with Chattanooga. Montana over Eastern Washington. Weber State over McNeese. Idaho over UC Davis, and Montana State over Idaho State.
All right, Fritz, what are yours?
Well, I've been really debating only one, and that's Big Cliff and McNeese State coming up to taking on Weber State. I'll get back to that. Let's start with at the top. I'll pick Northern Colorado over Cal Poly, Sac State over NEU, Chattanooga over Portland State, Montana over EWU, Idaho over Davis, Cats over the Bengals, and I'll take McNeese. So let's see if Weber can handle Big Clifton McDowell, the former Grace quarterback, is with McNeese.
All right. John and Mark, you guys are both tied at 40-6, just one win off the leaderboard. So, John, let's start with you on this one. What are your picks?
Yeah, okay. That's not bad, only being one game behind him. I thought we were going to be a lot further behind.
Everyone's doing well. I'm the only one that's a few games back, but I made up ground last week, so hopefully I'm getting better.
All righty. Well, I'm gonna pick Northern Colorado also at home. Like I said, I'm not as definitive on that one as I was a week ago when I was thinking about it, but I think that they'll get that win. Sac State over NAU. I'm also going to go Chattanooga over Portland State. Montana to get that first win on the red turf. I think Weber's going to get it going against McNeese State, or McNeese. It's not state anymore. Idaho will get the road win at Davis, and Montana State will keep their perfect record.
All right, Mark.
All right, I got Northern Colorado over Cal Poly, Sac State winning at NAU, Chattanooga. As much as I want to pick Portland State, they need some good things to happen to them after getting beaten bad by WSU and Boise State. But I think Chattanooga beats Portland State. The Grizz eke out a win in Cheney. Weber State gets Clifton McDowell thrown out of a second straight game, maybe, and wins that game.
2 out of 3. Would it be
2 out of 3? Okay, sorry, I missed one. Okay, and then Idaho wins the UC Davis, and Montana State wins at Idaho State.
All right, I gotta say I like the way that these picks are shaping out because we do have a little bit of a variety. I was really torn. Unlike Fritz with McNeese and Weber State, I was really torn between Idaho and UC Davis. But I think Idaho is battle tested. So my picks, I'm taking Cal Poly to beat Northern Colorado. For one, I need to make up some ground on these guys. And also, I just think Northern Colorado might be in for another losing season. I got Sac State over Northern Arizona, Chattanooga over Portland State, Montana over Eastern Washington. I'm taking Weber State to beat McNeese. Like I said, I think Idaho's battle tested, especially on the road with those big wins against Abilene Christian and Wyoming. So I think Idaho pulls it off. And then I think the Bobcats handle the Bengals pretty easy. So we'll see where we're at with standings next week. We could possibly, if things go the way expected, we could have a 4-way tie. Just know I won't be in it unless a miracle happens the next couple of weeks. But thank you, everyone, for joining the Big Sky Now podcast. Thank you to my panel, as always. Join us next Tuesday for the next episode of the Big Sky Now. Thank you for tuning in, and we'll talk soon.